I graduate from Teen Challenge. I did a whole year there, and I stayed on the course. Got back in my church, stayed on course for probably, I'd say, 6 months, and my dad was, hey, let's celebrate sobriety with a beer.
Let's be honest about recovery.
The rewards, the challenges.
Let's talk about our failures.
We are flawed people, after all.
Let's challenge the stigmas that weigh us down.
Because while most of us are looked at,
few of us are seen.
Let's talk about addiction.
And how Christ overcomes our weaknesses.
Because we are loved.
Because we are loved.
Because we are loved.
We are loved.
We are
Because
loved.
we are loved.
Hi, my name is Bo Ridley.
And I'm Tasha Ridley.
For years of my life, I thought was going to be drugs, rehab, jail, in that order. That's the way that I saw myself. But thank God I came out of that.
I struggled with addiction for 13 years, and due to sexual trauma, it led me down a path of lies, manipulation, and addiction. But praise God, I'm 14 years out of that cycle.
Hey everybody, Paul here with Jesus Loves Addicts, and you are about to embark on another journey, a two-part journey of redemptive grace. And today and next week, our tour guides will be Bo and Tasha Ridley. Stay tuned for part one. Hey everybody, welcome back to Jesus Loves Addicts. We're glad you're here. We're glad to be here and to share another story, bring another story of the redemptive power of the God we serve. And so today we're really excited to have Bo and Tasha Ridley on the show. They are a Christ-centered husband and wife team walking out the calling of God in their lives in a really special way. And so I would say that I have known them now for about 15 minutes. and that is, the God's light really does shine through these people. And so both really reflect that redeeming power of Christ that can happen for us in long-term recovery if we allow it to, right? Remember, God is a gentleman. He's not going to force himself on you, but he certainly will make every effort to invite you into the fold. And so Bo currently works in the electrical management department at the Mobile Regional Airport, and Tasha serves as the women's director at the Pasco Home. It's in Alabama. It's a faith-based transition home there. And as we see in so many of our guests who have walked through the fire, they come out of it and want to give back and help. And they're both doing that now. And so they're also raising two amazing kids, Caitlin and Bodie. Hello, Caitlin and Bodie. You don't know me, but hello. And they really both just have a passion for helping. And so that was their motivation for coming on this show, is to share their story, their strength, and their hope. And so, guys, thanks so much for being here. And one thing I did not mention about Bodie is he's also an uncelebrated comedian, but that may change after the show. You may find your...
I'll be playing at your local churches.
That's right. Send in your request for his. Yeah. So no, but we are happy you guys are here, and
thank you for having us.
So we have two stories to tell that merge into one. We always like to take kind of a little snapshot of the upbringing and what got you here. Who would like to start? Would you?
I can go first.
There you go. Okay, tell us a little bit about what life looked like for you coming up.
I had a really, really good life coming up. I had two loving, amazing parents that sacrificed so much for me and my brother, my older brother. They both really instilled in us the love of a husband and wife, and especially my mother. And I'll tell you how in just a second here. But she put inside of us that no matter what you face, you go through it because you have God on your side. And that was a great upbringing for me. She actually, there were probably many a times that she wanted to leave my father, but with God, she was able to see him come to know the Lord. But 3 years before he passed away, he came to know who Christ was.
What a great role model.
And it was amazing. So the reason I say it was an amazing childhood is because there were so many other things shielded from me. But my dad had a pretty big addiction to alcohol. But me and my brother coming up and seeing it, it really was, I guess, in the background because of a loving mother that, shielded us from that. So I always will say it was a great childhood because it was. On Christmas morning, you couldn't even see the living room floor from Christmas presents. But you just never know the sacrifice your parents make for you.
Well, your mom was really living out that advice, wasn't she?
Yes, she really was. And my dad, like I said, he was as good as one could be on the side of an addiction that he was going through. But like I said, 3 years before he left this earth, he knew who the Lord was, and that was amazing. And he lived it out. Started going to church, I remember one time he got so frustrated at something at the house. He said, I got to get out. I'm going to church. I got to get out of here. And I don't even know if it was a Sunday or not, but
that's interesting. We went from I'm going to the bar to I'm going to church. Isn't that awesome?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
let me ask you just a quick question on something you said there. You said he was as good a dad as he could be on that side of addiction, which it's a gracious way to put it, but in reality, that is typically not very good.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah. What did that look like?
The way I was telling that was through my eyes.
Yeah.
Now, through his eyes or even my mother's eyes was probably a whole nother story, I can imagine. So, and she's still not one to, tell me the things that maybe they have gone through or anything like that, because coming up, it wasn't seen. Now, don't get me wrong, there were arguments, as there would be in any household, but for the most part of it, I'd say 90% of it, it was a normal childhood coming up, I guess you would say, because it was shielded. Yeah. So
was he available? Like, was he emotionally available?
All the time.
So, so he was
all the time. I think the biggest part would be if for an addiction side would be possibly maybe the language, there was language,
sure,
obviously, and it's so much so not only that, but with possibly where he would go, hang out and things like that. So there was that aspect of it too. Me, being so young, I didn't realize it, obviously, but later on coming up, I ultimately adopted that lifestyle.
Yeah.
It came along with it. And
well, how old were you when he got sober?
I was, he passed away in 2013. So I was 30.
Oh, so you were an adult. So, I mean, even through your teenage years,
absolutely.
He was using. I mean, and at those years, we become a little more observant, a little more. So what were those years like for you?
I was gone a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was there, but anytime, my grandfather was a musician, and so a lot of the times I would go with him to certain musical festivals, bluegrass festivals, where I'd learn how to play the banjo, the guitar, the mandolin, and things like that. So I was actually gone a lot in those times. It was funny because I remember one weekend there was a car show coming up, and my dad asked me, he said, you want to go with me to this car show? And I was like, yeah, I'll go. Because we hadn't seen each other as far as, we definitely live in the same house, but we haven't really communicated. And I was like, yeah, okay, definitely. And so we, had that moment together, and he's like, you want to maybe go hunting or something? It's like, okay. So I saved up my money and bought me a rifle. And he showed me, exactly what to do, what not to do, and all that stuff. He skilled me on that. And so as far as that goes, there could have been, there was definitely an alcoholic beverage beside him. But the whole time, he's teaching me, he's raising me and showing me gun safety, he's showing me boat safety. Matter of fact, he made us get our boating license, both me and my brother, when I think we were 13 or 14. Couldn't even drive a car, but we were able to get our boating license. And so that's what I guess I'm trying to get across to convey to you is he was there 100% as a father and a loving father, But when it came, when I get into my story, I'll tell you more about that as far as where my addiction started.
Yeah.
But as far as him being a father, I couldn't ask for anything better. And there go too with my mother. Amazing woman of God. Yeah. If there was ever a person, and you may know somebody in your life that's like this, but if there's ever a person that you would think to get into heaven on their good works alone, it could be, your mother or somebody in that aspect, because, man, she was a saint. I didn't see, I didn't see how she did it. Looking back,
right.
I didn't see that. I was like, wow. And there's things today still that I don't know that could have happened.
Sure.
But, man, she was just a saint of a woman, or is a saint of a woman. She lives just a few miles away from us now. And so she's, matter of fact, with her grandkids, our kids, watching them. And, but she made sure her kids had what they needed. And, as far as my brother's the same thing. My brother, he the same way. He had every bit of opportunities and challenges, I guess, too, as I did. So
was your brother also in addiction?
He was.
Okay.
He was.
And you said he's older, though.
He was. Let's see, probably. Well, he's a year, a month, and a week older than me. He's passed on now. He was actually killed in a car accident not too far from the Mission of Hope over in Alabama. He was in a halfway house there. And he had done a program to get himself cleaned up in Coleman, Alabama. And that place did not have aftercare. I don't remember exactly how long it was, but they didn't have aftercare, and he needed, just like I did as well, needed aftercare. So he called me up and said, hey, is there you guys, can you fit me in? I said, absolutely. You come pass a drug test, you completed this. And he did. He came, he did the drug test, passed it, and that was on a Thursday. I think it was Thursday. And he was in an automobile accident that Saturday and died.
Oh, my goodness.
Just not even hardly a mile from the Mission of Hope. Him and another guy were they were coming back from a Bible study they were doing at Wilmer Baptist Church, and he just got a new car, and he had a lead foot, and he's going entirely way too fast on that road over there, and he plowed into a tree, missed his turn, and plowed into a tree, and it killed him instantly.
Were you actively in your addiction at that time?
I was not. I was working for the Mission of Hope at that time. Okay. I was probably maybe a couple of years clean, maybe 2 years clean, somewhere around in there.
Well, let me ask you, it's kind of out of place chronologically, but since we've landed on it, so you're 2 years sober, brother dies. How do you handle that in sobriety? That
is a great question, because like I said a while ago, we're working at the Mission of Hope. So I've got 30 to 40 to maybe even 50 men watching me to see how I'm going to handle this. Yeah. And
they can learn if they can do it, if they ever have to.
Exactly. So at the time when it happened, this is kind of cutting into the other part of our testimony, but at that time when it happened, it was an extremely trying time for me. And I don't want to say too much because that's getting into her part, because this woman beside me was a huge help. And one of the main reasons I think that God put us together was because he knew I was going to go through times like that and how I would handle it. But it was completely God putting the book of Job in front of me. And I started reading it. And I think it's the last few chapters of Job where it's pretty much God's answer to Job. Yeah. And he's basically, in a nutshell, saying, who are you to tell me when the sun goes up and when the sun, or when this person clocks out of this earth, or when this person leaves? Do you not think that I'm, I've got all this in the palm of my hand? And it opened my eyes, because it was not so much a coddling kind of, you're going to be okay. It was like,
I've got this.
You know what I mean?
Sit it all the way down.
Oh my goodness, it was an eye opener, because at that particular time in our life, that was 2013. or excuse me, when my brother passed, that was 2014. But in that particular time in our life, I never felt more close to God because of the fact of this is not it. What we're living right now, what we're doing right now is a vapor, and it's going to be gone so quick. So that really led me into looking into the afterlife as far as actually reading about it and pondering about it and thinking, you know, really coming to the realization that this life is so short.
Amen.
That what we're doing right now at this very moment is going to be a memory. And we're going to talk about it up in heaven. Hey, you remember that time we got you on the podcast? You know what I mean? It's going to be things like that. Yeah. And it's going to be for eternity. So God...
Did your brother know the Lord?
He did.
Oh, okay.
He did.
Awesome.
He did. That was another thing that was absolutely amazing because the other program got him to know who God was and basically put into action what my mother had taught us so many years before. Yeah. And so I think I had a cousin tell me this during that time. She said, you know, I think for my brother Donnie, for his life, it was a viewing for my mom, for myself, to be able to see that God has an outcome for all of us. But hey, I've got him. I got him in my, you know, he's in my hands. Don't worry about that. Yeah. So it was a really big eye opener for me.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Job because not many people will refer to that book as a comforting book. Right. But you're so right? I mean, if we will hear it, those last few chapters are saying, look, if you're going to trust me, you're going to trust me when it's good and you're going to trust me when it's bad. Yeah. Right. We can't pick and choose that. So I love that already, that it was that. I'd like to take a moment to recognize a major podcast sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by America's Thrift Stores, your go-to option for decluttering and giving back. If you have a closet bursting at the seams or a garage that's seen better days, we've got the perfect solution for you.
That's right. America's Thrift Stores makes it easy to clear out the clutter and make a positive impact in your community. Whether you're cleaning out your wardrobe, downsizing your living space, or just looking to give back, America's Thrift Stores has you covered.
And here's the best part. You've got options. Schedule a hassle-free home pickup, drop off your items at one of their convenient donation sites, or swing by an America's Thrift Store to donate in person. No matter which way you choose, you're making a difference.
Absolutely. Every donation you make to America's Thrift Stores directly benefits charities in your area, such as the Home of Grace and other fantastic organizations dedicated to helping those in need.
For example, donations made to America's Thrift Stores in southern Mississippi help the Home of Grace provide support and assistance to individuals facing drug and alcohol addiction. Your contributions make a real impact on their mission to provide freedom from addiction through Christ-centered recovery. So not only are you decluttering your life, but you're also helping build a stronger and more supportive community.
It's truly a double blessing. So what are you waiting for? Clean out that closet, clear out that garage, and make a positive difference in your community by donating to America's Thrift Stores.
Visit America's Thrift Stores online to schedule a home pickup, locate a donation site near you, or get directions to one of their store locations.
America's Thrift Stores, where giving back never goes out of style.
Kind of stern talking to from God to mankind that comforted you. I love that. Well, so let's pause because we're already at a place where your stories are intertwining, and let's Tasha, what kind of
go to you?
Yeah, what did your story look like early on?
Well, my upbringing was a little bit different. My dad is military and met my mom in Japan when he was stationed over there. And so they got married and 2 years later had me. And so we grew up moving around every 3 years or so, never really finding home and roots. Exactly. I did not grow up in a Christian background. My mom was actually at the time Buddhist. And that's a culture in Japan. That is the number one religion there. And we just never went to church. I never knew about the Lord. I never read a Bible or any of that. So my childhood, when I was younger, I thought was perfect. Until about the end of second grade, I had a neighbor come over who was 18, and he raped me. And my dad was deployed at the time. My mom was out. At that time? I was 8. Just turned 8. And my dad was deployed overseas on a ship, and my mom was outside with his mom, just socializing. And he told me he wanted to show me something in the house and proceeded to rape me. And at that age, I knew nothing, obviously, of what was going on. His response was, clean up the mess. And this is our secret. This is how men show love. So this is me telling you I love you, and you don't tell anybody.
This was an 18-year-old.
18-year-old.
And a man. You're a baby.
Yes. And so I didn't tell anybody. I continued with my life. I was very active in sports. I was a tomboy. So I was always outside playing sports, and I've always loved music, and that's kind of was my escape. I always internalized everything. Looking back now, I know I struggled with depression, anxiety, and just the not knowing who you are. I mean, my life and innocent childhood was taken from me. So, but at the time, I, again, just was trying to go through the motions of whatever life is supposed to be like, obeying my parents, doing good in school, excelling in sports, and those type of things. So,
do you mind if I just ask you one more question about that? Because I know that's such a sensitive topic. Thank you, by the way, for being courageous enough to engage it. And sometimes I think we run away from it, but there's probably somebody that needs to hear this. So, one of the things that strikes me is that this is a neighbor.
Yes.
And so this is somebody you have to see day after day after day. That had to add to the difficulty of.
Yes. I was actually really close to his younger brother. We played on the same ball team. But being military, I would say it was probably a few months after they were deployed somewhere else. So I didn't have to be around him for long. It was a few months, and they were gone. So out of sight, out of mind. Again, I kept it to myself and just pretended that nothing happened. Never
developed a pattern real quick.
Developed some really bad patterns very quickly. The guilt, the shame, hiding everything. In my household, we weren't taught to be an open book. My dad still to this day is an open book. So we always had to stuff feelings anyway. So I became very good at that. But
do you have siblings?
I do. I have a brother who's older. He's 3 years older.
Do you feel like, looking back, that knowing yourself before that happened, do you feel like there was any changes in your normal behaviors? Do you feel like somebody should have known something was different?
Yes, I do. Looking back, I remember packing my bags up, wanting to run away. I remember that's when all the lying started. That's when the little things of, being a bratty little sister. I annoyed my brother even more. But I know, again, sports and music were my outlets. And so I was a perfectionism, and those type of traits started happening as well. Always trying to please my parents, please people, and excel in sports and being the best that I could be at all of it.
I need y'all to see me do this, and I can do this well, because then we don't have to talk about anything else.
Well, one more question on that piece of it. You said that, that began the cycle, and two of the emotions you wrapped in there were guilt and shame.
Absolutely.
Did you see yourself as to blame for that?
Absolutely.
You did?
Absolutely. I thought something was wrong with me. So also when I was 2 years old, I had a very bad case of pneumonia and was hospitalized for it. And they realized that my heart was on the other side. and it's called dextrocardia. So I was always in and out of the hospital. So I always felt something was different. Something was wrong. I'm made different. I was created different. Why am I like this? And then that happened when I was
so in that 8-year-old psyche, that reinforces all
absolutely.
that.
I was
and
right.
It just
Something's
drove
wrong.
Yes, it just drove that cycle even further in my belief of.
Sure.
And our go-to is don't talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in that time frame, I'm 46 now, so that time frame, nobody ever talked about any of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. It didn't happen.
Nope.
Well, I'm anxious to hear your process of healing, which I know comes. So, but, okay. So how does this young 8-year-old girl move forward? What? Diving into music and sports for one.
Diving into sports, absolutely. I was always in a sport at all times. I even played travel ball and stuff like that. But the hard part about it was moving again, not having roots anywhere, saying goodbye to friends. I was never a social butterfly. So it was hard making friends. And once I did, they were lifelong friends. I did anything for my friends.
Yeah.
But my parents let me and my brother travel to visit family in Japan for the summer one year. And then another year we went to Arkansas to visit my dad's side of the family. So we traveled alone for summer vacation quite often. And my brother always did his own thing and I did mine. But it was a great opportunity for me to find out about my culture, especially the Japanese culture, because I had never lived in Japan by that time. And I think I was about 10 when we went over there for the summer, which my grandparents didn't speak any English and we didn't speak any Japanese. I didn't even really know I was Japanese at that time. So you're going to this foreign country where, it's very hard to communicate, but it was amazing. So I really love that aspect of being able to see different things. My parents and I traveled a lot, road trips and stuff during my childhood as well. So we had the fun, exciting times, but I, again, just internalized everything and hid who I was. Yeah. I really didn't know who I was.
On the outside, everything was great.
Right.
Who you thought you were.
Exactly.
Right. That's it.
But at the age of 12, when we went to visit and stay with family in Arkansas, I also had a family member who molested me. And once again, the response was, this is me showing love. This is our secret. And so that, of course, brought back the things that happened when I was 8 years old.
And reinforced it.
So there is my view of men of this is how they show love. It's just a hurtful thing.
And it makes you feel ashamed.
And this was the second time of being a victim to that. So again, there is something wrong with me. Yeah. Obviously, did I ask for this? Did I do
something
what did I do wrong?
Deserved
and felt that it's all my fault. Yeah. And it got so bad to a point where I threatened to tell someone. And that's when I really knew, and that was the big eye opener of this is not okay and this is not right, when they threatened to kill me and kill themselves. Yeah.
Wait. This person at 12 or 13 threatened to kill themselves
said they
and
would
to kill
kill
you.
me and kill themselves, and then everybody would blame me.
So was this an ongoing thing? Because you said it got...
It was almost all summer, so about 2 months.
While you were out of town.
So you threatened to tell somebody, but still never crossed
Once
that
I was
line.
threatened, I didn't tell a soul.
Yeah, that shut it down.
No.
But you said you also realized at that time that you realized
that it was
this
wrong.
Is not
this
okay.
is not okay.
Yeah.
That was the first time, even with the 8-year-old, myself as 8 years old, and then this time, that was the first time I realized this is not right, because they wouldn't threaten something like that.
Right.
But again, I didn't say a word.
Yeah.
Didn't say a word.
So you go from 12, 13, having that experience. What do the next years look like for you? More of the same, soccer or sports?
I was always, I was in sports, but I also started stealing from stores. I started rebelling a little bit more. Now, again, I was in a strict household, so when we rebelled, we were punished. But what my parents didn't know, it was like I was living an alternate life, a chameleon type personality. I would whatever my friends were into, I was into. If that friend didn't like this, I didn't like it anymore. Anything to keep people liking me. I needed that validation from people to find my self-worth, because I didn't have any.
You didn't have any, and you didn't know what you liked.
I didn't know.
It's like the runaway bride.
And for many years, I didn't know who I was, what I liked, because it was whatever everybody else was into. But I remember started smoking around age 14, started stealing from stores. We lived in Japan at this time. My dad was stationed there. So off base, there's no cameras. There's policemen don't even carry guns there. It's just a type of country that there's not a lot of crime, but me and my friends would just, go start stealing. I would start lying and manipulating and jumping from relationship to relationship. I was very addicted to men, just the attention of that aspect. And, that's where I see my rebellion started. Yeah. And the addictive personalities also kind of came.
It's rebellion, but I hear behind it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but also really a plea for acceptance, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you're growing up thinking you're to blame for all these things, that any affirmation feels good because you're not giving it to yourself. So yes, there's rebellion, but really there's a cry here.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. At this time, I also found out that my brother was only my half brother by a mutual friend. I did not realize that my mom was previously married and had my brother. And then shortly after my brother was born, she ended up getting a divorce and meeting my dad. And my dad raised my brother. So, he was 6 months old. So that's his father. But that was another kind of blow. Okay, so I guess our whole family keeps secrets. I'm going to continue to hold on to mine, and not let them know anything about me personally. And it was just like, I'm your kid. I will follow your rules, but you're not going to know who I am. And I don't know who you are.
I don't trust you.
Yeah. It's just it wasn't an open discussion on real life situations and stuff.
And you weren't taught,
I was very sheltered too.
Yes. And not taught that you could talk about how it made you feel.
Right. Absolutely.
But also I hear kind of a duality in that not sharing, right? On one hand, it's punishing them. You don't deserve to know who I am. But on the other hand, you don't like who you think you are.
Not
and so there's also this thing, well, I don't want you to know who I am, right? So there's this kind of internal tug of war. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Have drugs and alcohol entered the scene yet?
Not at all.
Okay. Just so smoking is tobacco.
Correct.
Okay.
And relationships.
That addictive quality for sure. Absolutely. How far are we from when you get introduced to drugs and alcohol?
Drugs and alcohol. I was introduced to alcohol right at my senior year, but I was never allowed to go to the parties or after spend the night at friend's house or anything like that. Like I said, I was very sheltered. So that part of my childhood being sheltered came into good. It was the good part because I was not around people or situations that things were around, like parties and stuff. So alcohol, I guess, started probably towards the end of my senior year, right after graduation. And then drugs didn't enter until I started college that same year after I graduated.
It strikes me that, on one hand, this home life is very sheltering, but on the other hand, under that bubble, some of the most horrendous abuses occur and some of the most horrendous things that would challenge our ability to trust others occur. So almost just two different worlds under that same umbrella. I mean, what a thing for somebody to have to figure out. So did you find kind of almost immediate relief in the alcohol?
No, not on the alcohol. Okay. I became more bubbly and friendly.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm really kind of a quiet, shy person.
Reserved.
But alcohol enabled me to talk more and to feel, I guess, more comfortable, not necessarily comfortable in my own skin, but comfortable enough to open up some. Yeah. So it's really when the drugs started. That was where it became a really big problem because it made me feel powerful. It made me feel seen, and I wasn't hiding in my shell anymore. I was able to do things and say things that were actually on my mind that I kept and
You didn't
internalized.
care as much what they
care.
thought.
No.
And that right there was the drug.
Yeah. And it made me not think of everything that I overanalyzed and internalized. So that was the main part of when I first started into drugs is I escaped myself.
Yeah, sure.
Because I was my own worst enemy.
What was the introduction? What did you?
I started dating a guy in college. He was a social user. I remember him saying on our first date, you know, I'm a pothead. I didn't even know what a pothead was. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. You know,
you like flowers.
Until I was like, okay, wake, bake, smoke all day type deal. And I stayed away from it for a few months, but then on weekends he would use various different drugs. And at some point I said, well, let me try because I wanted to fit in and I wanted to be what everybody else was doing. I wanted to be that person too. So, but once I had that taste, I was addicted from day one. Like I was a functioning addict for probably 10 years of my life. And again, nobody knew.
And what was involved? What were the substances you were using? What did that grow into?
It was pretty hardcore stuff in the beginning. I kind of started with cocaine, ecstasy, acid, and things like that. And then in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with a lot of health problems with my back and scoliosis and all of that. So that's when I met a pain management doctor.
I was just going to say Opiates.
And he gave me whatever I wanted. That was right when Oxycontin started coming out and literally would give you injections and send you on the road with 5 bottles fulls of whatever I wanted. And I still did street drugs and stuff on the weekends.
And this was in your 20s?
It was in my 20s, yes.
You know, that had to be, you know, when you reflect on some of the sheltered life part, that had to be a bit of a scary threshold to cross. I mean, once you crossed it, it felt great. But I mean, that initial thing, I would imagine, was kind of a really apprehensive move.
Once I started college, I felt a sense of wanting to do it my way. The pride in me was, I'm tired of living with these rules, with a curfew. I'm in college. This is not fun. You
can't really tell me what to do at this point.
You're telling me where and when I can't go, things like that. So shortly after I started dating the guy I met in college, I moved out with him. I believe I was 19. And that's really when things went crazy because I was doing what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And I had no restrictions at that time, no accountability, nobody to call in and say, hey, I'm here. I'll be home at this time. It was, I get to finally do what I want. And I chose to do.
Yeah, the entirety of that environment supported it. So it's interesting, you know, because sometimes we look at this from individual stories, but we've often pointed out that there is no direct correlation between background and ending up an addict, right? We've talked about half of them come from great homes, half of them come from troubled. And here you are, a married couple having found each other with
completely different backgrounds.
Those two stories in one marriage, right? I mean, even though there was alcoholism in your home, it sounds like your dad did a pretty good job of being a dad and covering that.
He really was.
Whereas the chaotic sort of nature, the dark side of life was more prominent here. So, so you kind of step across that threshold. It moves pretty quickly. We had gotten into your teen years where was alcohol. How quickly did that progress for you?
Well, with me, I guess it would begin with, mainly my salvation. I came to know the Lord in November of 2001. And if you'll remember, that was just a couple months after 9/11. And I remember obviously watching it on the screen. I was in my early 20s, and I remember watching it on the screen and thinking, if this is real, if there's so much evil in the world that this is real, that this is happening right now, then there's got to be a God. And I remember going through that, the past couple months and thinking, this is wild. I mean, my mother, obviously, she raised us in church. And I remember at work one day, a guy had a book. It was called Left Behind. And I asked him if I could read it. He said, sure. And so when he was done with it, I borrowed it and I read it. And obviously, they have more.
Yeah.
After this was early 2001 or in the early 2000s. So all the books weren't out yet. They hadn't written them all yet. So I had to wait. But I started getting into church. I started getting I played music at church. I started getting into I was, like I said, in my early 20s. So I started getting into the college career people and loving it, because I knew these folks from growing up. Yeah, and really loving it. I got a job at this place where we used to make lights, the cans that lights go in, the like the reflector behind it. And I remember one day I was sanding on a part. This happened on a Thursday because I was going on a missions trip that Saturday to Costa Rica. And that's how involved in the church I've been getting. And so I'm standing on this part, and all of a sudden this machine unit comes and sits down. Obviously, I knew it happens all the time, but my hand wasn't supposed to be there. And I got caught on this machine. Wow. And it ripped part of my pinky off. Oh, well, this is what introduced me to
opiates,
drugs. And
through the doctors again.
And so I go rush to the emergency room, and they bandaged me up and all that, and fixed me up and everything. Well, I told him, I said, I'm going on this missions trip. It's coming up Saturday, and I'm leaving Saturday morning. And he bandaged me up, fixed me up and everything, and he gave me surgery, and he gave me antibiotics and a big old bottle of pain medication. And so I do the trip. I have a great time. It's wonderful. I'm taking the stuff as needed. But later...
which you're probably finding a need for it quite often, right? Yeah.
It tends to do that.
Right, yeah.
And so... As it goes on, I'm still taking this stuff, and I've already, we'll just skip a year or two just because I've done mission trips. I'm doing stuff with the church. I've actually played music in the church. Well, it gets to the point where it's starting to take over my life, where my friends are noticing that I'm not hanging around as much anymore in the church. I'm doing, I'm just there when I have to be. You know what I mean? And I'm starting to kind of veer away from it because...
Sorry, can I interject a quick question? Because you said we're skipping a couple of years. So at this point where the friends are starting to notice, I'm assuming we've moved away from actual prescriptions and you're now buying on the street, or are you still getting prescriptions?
We're getting there.
So for this long, you're still getting prescriptions?
Absolutely. That's a good thing. I'm glad you asked that, because that does give us a good timeline, because I'm still doing prescriptions for a couple of years.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And
but early 2000s.
Yeah.
And that's all you ever heard.
Right. And so... But I go to my doctor and I tell him, look, I've got to do something. I've been on this for quite a while now. And look, I think doctors, physicians, I think medical surgeons, these people are important, and we need them in this life. They're extremely important. So I don't put any blame on this doctor whatsoever, because it's my doing.
Yeah.
This doctor... I was taking Lortab, 7.5 milligram. He said, well, they've got this thing that's come out and help you get off of it. It's called Methadone. And so he gave me a 10 milligram Methadone to get off of Lortab 7.5. And look, like I said a while ago, when I don't blame this doctor, because when I leave this earth, I'm going to stand before my maker, and I'm going to be alone. Yeah. That doctor's not going to be beside me. My daddy's not going to be beside me. My mama, nobody. I have to answer for what I did. So with that entails, the safety aspect. Hey, look, just take these when you have to have it. Of course we're not. We're going to take them when, because now you find out this stuff. You have to have it. This stuff gives you courage. This stuff gives you, I don't feel like doing this today. Well, I can take this and I can go do my job.
Before we go any further, let's take a minute to address the man or the woman listening to today's episode and wishing for a better life. Or maybe addiction has completely overtaken a family member or a friend.
You are not alone. As you may know, the Jesus Loves Addicts podcast is produced by the Home of Grace, a Christ-centered addiction recovery program in South Mississippi with over 60 years of experience.
The Home of Grace has residential programs ranging from 30 days to 12 months. With 2 separate campuses for men and women, they are fully staffed with caring individuals who want nothing more than to guide you to a life of recovery.
Services include individual and group counseling, marriage and family counseling, classes, workshops, GED, and workforce training, all grounded in biblical principles.
And because of donations from the community, the cost of the program is incredibly affordable.
Thousands of alumni from across the country can tell you there is no other program in the world quite like the Home of Grace.
If you want to start a new path to recovery, don't wait. Speak with an admission specialist today. Visit homeofgrace.org or call 833-55-GRACE to talk with someone.
That's 833-55-GRACE. Call the Home of Grace today. You know, I have to say real quick, sorry, Bo, I keep cutting you off, but only because what a wonderfully recovery-oriented way to put that. You are much more gracious than I with that perspective. It actually infuriates me about the medical side of things. And so while I get what you're saying, and I wanted to pause here to kind of really get everybody else to understand that, is we only get well when we take responsibility for our side of the equation. Yes. We can't live in blaming others, and that's true. However, there is a really, in my humble opinion, you don't have to agree with me, in my humblest of opinions, there is a very irresponsible side of the medical field. I agree. That absolutely just, the fact that you're on opiates for 2 years, the fact that, we're giving another opiate to come off of opiates. And I can get on my high horse there and probably show some of my ignorance too, but it is infuriating. I think there was a point in time in this country where doctors were probably some of the most proficient pushers out there. So I appreciate your graciousness and I appreciate your recovery mindedness of taking responsibility. But I would just humbly say, in fact, I often tell clients this, that in recovery, you have to be your own best advocate. You have to advocate for yourself in the medical field because it's very easy for them, sometimes well-intentioned, sometimes maybe not, right? We know that there was lots of stories around the opiate epidemic, and unfortunately some of it nefarious and some of it well-intentioned. But you have to be your own best advocate in recovery to prevent that kind of relapse potential, right? So maybe a whole show sitting in that subtopic there. So I'm sorry. So you're 2 years in, still on the prescription side of this, and
now you've gotten into methadone.
Yes, the methadone, and I guess going back to that, saying that I don't believe. It's not that I don't believe that this doctor's at fault. It's more of I don't blame him, right? Because of the fact of what I've done to myself. Just like the Home of Grace, the Mission of Hope. City of all these places that you've ultimately, if something was to come into here and somebody was to take it, you can't blame this place. Right. It has to be. You're right. It has to be on you. So, and I don't want to jump ahead because I've got something to say about that too, about my addiction and how many times it took me to get it right. Yeah. So doing that, and I'm starting to obviously backslide from church, and I'm starting to think to myself, how can I get off this stuff? How do I do this without trying to hide it, I guess, as best as I can, without people knowing I have a problem? So that's when I turned to alcohol. And using the alcohol for that, I could get myself up in the morning. I could, it was almost, it's legal. Mm-hmm. It's right there in every, store that you could, any convenience store you go into, it's going to be right there. And so it was actually, all right, I can do this, and turn from one thing to another. And it ended up drinking myself so bad that I ended up in the hospital, and my parents were almost like, what happened? What's going on? And so I have to tell them, I've gotten alcohol poisoning, and I ended up in the I guess an emergency room, so to speak. I got alcohol poisoning, and my dad asked me, he said, Bo, I would see you drink occasionally, but here, in the past, couple of months, you drink like you're not ever going to get another drink again.
Is your dad still in his active addiction when he's giving you this feedback?
He's giving me this. So I have somebody telling me
that you
how
drink
bad
too much.
I am.
Yeah.
And that was an eye-opener. So my mom, they had heard about Teen Challenge. And so this was in 2007. We're at 2007. And I absolutely, I was, let's go. Let's do it. I got to get out of this. And so it's a year-long program in 2007, and I go in with the ultimate goal of trying to get off pain medication and whatever that aspect of it as well to lead to that. Because I was also, mind you, doing alcohol, basic drugs as far, it was rare to have marijuana around our neighborhood, but if it was there. But I go there with the intent to stop getting off pain, to get off this methadone, and did the year, got through it, but I did not surrender. I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it for my dad, for my mom, for my church. And so, yes, I did get off methadone, but the alcohol was still there.
That's what I was fixing to ask.
The alcohol was still there because I would use this to get off of that. I was like, well, there must be, there's nothing wrong with that. And some social aspects, people are able to drink one glass of wine maybe a year. I'm not that type of person.
Yeah, me either.
I'm not that person. That great for them, but no, I can't do that. And
but did you really know, and did you have any understanding of addiction other than I'm having some consequences from the methadone? I need to get off of that.
None whatsoever. So I was so naive in this world of drugs and alcohol. Didn't have a clue. So I graduate from Teen Challenge. I did a whole year there, and I stayed on the course. Got back in my church. Stayed on course for probably, I'd say, 6 months, and my dad was, hey, let's celebrate sobriety with a beer. We can have a beer. Like, okay, that's
sounds
fine.
like a good idea.
Great.
Yeah. So, I'm starting to hang out with him more now, but before I told you my teens and stuff, I wasn't really around him that much or in my younger years, but in my early 20s, I'm starting to get around him more. Well, we start to hang out a little bit more. I'm starting to drink a little more. I got an offer to go to Nashville. A friend of mine I used to know, she worked for a guy named Porter Wagner, which he was a country music singer way back in the day.
Yeah.
And she moved back up there and wanted me to come up there and help out and whatever I could do. I said, absolutely, let's do it. And so when you get into Nashville, you start seeing all these great people, that you saw growing up playing music. You get to kind of bump elbows with them.
Yeah.
It's a really, really neat aspect or a whole new culture for me to see. So I get to do that, and I'm drinking off and on, still going to church. But then it becomes where if you're going to start playing music and you start doing things, you got to stay up. You got to start, really. If you're going to play ball with these guys, you got to play ball with them.
Nashville's
and be
major
up
leagues.
when they're up and all that. So that introduced me to speed. And so this was something that could keep you going, keep you awake. You hear the stories like Elvis and Johnny Cash of all that. I mean, it's rampant. It's still happening to this day, So doing that, kind of going back and forth from Alabama to Tennessee, Nashville, and it got to where I was getting really, really out of control. As far as I'm doing cocaine in the Grand Ole Opry's bathroom. I remember walking into the stall.
Probably not the first time that's been done either, though. You're still in those circles. Yeah, you know.
I walk in, and I remember doing what I was doing, because I don't want to give any glory to that, but doing the drug, and I remember the lights went out completely in the bathroom. And I don't know if it was me or if it was somebody came in there and turned the light off or what, but there wasn't a soul in there when I went in there, and the lights went out, and it scared me to death.
Yeah.
I immediately flushed what I was doing right then and there. I got my stuff together. I told the people I was living with, it's like, I'm done. I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
And so moved back to Birmingham, went, kind of tucked my tail under my leg, and went back home. And my dad was out on the driveway. It was almost like he knew I was coming. Back then, we had cell phones back then, but there was no smartphone or anything like that, So there may have been and I think text messages is cost. So it was a phone call or not. So I don't know I don't remember calling him or not, but he was waiting out on the driveway. This in Birmingham from Nashville is like 3 hour drive, and I pull up and there he is, and so we talk and tell him what all went on, this couple of years of my life, finally seeing him again, And now don't get me wrong, because I would bring them up there. You know, my mom, she got to come up to Nashville and stuff like that too. But coming back home, and then it ultimately led me going back to Teen Challenge, because they had a 4 month, I think it was 4 month restoration. Yeah. And so I did that. I told them the whole story. I said, I need to get help again. Did that and did the restoration, did 4 months, but still was not surrendered. Now, this is where I want to come into what I was going to talk about a while ago about, the Home of Grace, the City of Refuge, the Mission of Hope. These places are wonderful. Teen Challenge is a wonderful place. Yeah. These are great places to come and to hear God's voice again, but you have to want it.
Yeah.
The client has to want it.
That's right.
You can do all that you can for that person, lay it out for them or make them fight for it. It doesn't matter. But that client really has to want it. You have to want this change. So I did the 4 months there and was not ready, was not done.
But do you feel like a part of you did think that you were done?
I did. I was. Now I'm speaking in present tense, but in past tense, no, I thought I had it. Yeah, we're good.
You didn't know what done looked like.
I didn't know what done looked like. So I come back home, do the whole spiel again with alcohol, with drugs, with.
So on that question, though, that statement, not knowing what done looked like, come back, start. Done for you, I'm guessing, again, I make these statements that are really questions, but so done for you, would it be fair to say, really seemed like, okay, I can control it now? Yes. Done wasn't being off of it. It was like, I'm at a point where I can control it.
I can successfully drink.
Yeah.
That's very good, Peter. I like how you put that. That's true. That's what I thought anyway.
Yeah.
I'm done, so I can successfully do this.
Yeah.
And so, and you know what? Addiction will have such a grip on you that people that have been years and years clean sometimes cannot be educated in that aspect, in that thought of it, and think that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I come home. My mom is, at her wit's end. My dad, he's done. I've pawned my vehicle. I pawned my guitars, my instruments, pawned all these things. And by the grace of God, thank you, Jesus, for parents that never give up on you. They got got those things back for me. And then my mom had heard about the Mission of Hope from her sister-in-law, and she told me about it. And it was down in Mobile. And so I had decided, well, this has got to be something. This has got to be it. Because in and out of rehabs, and jail too comes with all that, but in and out of rehabs, I was thinking this has got to be something that I don't come back home to. I stay there. You know what I mean? I'm not. Matter of fact, my mother, she when she dropped me there, and she dropped me off at the It was an oyster shell driveway. And I got out. She said, Bo, you better make a home here because you're not coming
back.
home.
Well, good for her.
Right.
You will not be coming back.
Loving thing to do.
It was at that moment where I wasn't married, didn't have kids, in my early 30s, and kind of a music background, you know, as far as I had a song on a Porter Wagner CD. I thought that was pretty cool. But really nothing I didn't have a couch to sleep on. I didn't have anything, you know.
You had nothing keeping you from staying.
Nothing.
Which, you know, by the way, sorry, Bo, I keep interjecting because there's some things that come up that are really important to the concept of recovery and elements of recovery. Because you said, and I don't want people to, because we have talked about the codependent side of this and how tough love needs to be there. So you said, praise God for parents who never give up on you, and indeed. But I love the fact that she drew a bottom line, right? So not giving up on somebody doesn't mean always having an open door. Right. Doesn't mean not always softening their landing. Sometimes not giving up on them means tough love.
Yes.
Loving you enough to say no.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad.
Absolutely. So I went there. I went to got into the Mission of Hope, and later I'd get phone calls. Hey, when y'all coming home? When you coming home? When I get to see you?
Of course.
But
a little bit.
But I ended up in the program. It's just a 3-month program, and I had another friend that was in the program roughly the same time I went, and we both decided, well, let's do the halfway house because obviously we can't go home. Let's do the halfway house. And God spoke to me. He said, no. He said, you're not going in the halfway house. It almost scared me too much of the freedom that there was. Because in the halfway house, you go to work and then you come back. Well, you're able to go into the grocery stores, into the convenience stores, and come back. And it scared me so bad. I said, I can't do it. I said, that is just too much freedom for me right now. And so I opted to do it's basically an internship where you work for the program pretty much for free. But at that time, I didn't need money. I had nothing to pay for, so I didn't need money. I think they offered like maybe $25 a week, if that, you know, something like that. But
plus food and board.
Well, excuse me. Yes, I'm sorry. You're very right. They fed me. That was nice. And they, I could sleep there and bathe there. But it was one of the most freeing times of my life because I actually got it to where this is on me. It's not on the Mission of Hope. It's not on Teen Challenge. It's not on these jails to get me right. It's up to me. And I finally, sat with God and talked with him about, all right, I'm going to make a home here. This is going to be where I live. This is where if I do have a wife, if I do have kids, well, this is where we're going to stay because this is where I want to be. And I came into the program, did it, and actually went through my Bible, started reading scriptures and learning. Because obviously, being raised in church, you could quote a lot of scriptures. But when you start to study them, you're like, oh, that's what that meant. Oh, it wasn't just I can do all things through Christ or, it was, no, I've got to put him at the forefront of my life, at every part of my life. And then anything is possible. Anything that I want to do, but gives him glory, gives him honor,
and it's putting him in that place no matter what.
Yes, I completely surrendered to him 100% in that chapel on that hill, and I've been following him ever since of that moment. As far as without anything corrupting my mind or anything corrupting my body, any kind of medicine. Other than blood pressure, but any kind of medicine or alcoholic beverage, nothing can take the place of the presence of God in your life when you're following him wholeheartedly. And challenges come, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Absolutely.
But the challenges that you face when you're going through a difficult period on the other side of recovery, because you've got, I think it was roughly 7, maybe 8 years of addiction, of active addiction, and in and out of jail, in and out of rehab. now you've got forever, or from this moment now till you take your last breath, to make up for it, to get it right, to get to know God in a intimate aspect, and know His Son and what He really did for us.
One day at a time.
One day at a time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that was your moment. You've been sober since then.
Yes.
Awesome. And that was when?
That was 2011. So that was, we had 14 years? Is that what it is?
Okay.
Yeah, 14.
Awesome.
If my math is correct.
Two quick questions, and I want to
go to Tasha.
Yeah, switch back. So you talked about the jail stuff, and I appreciate you not wanting to glorify that aspect, but just a quick question. Were those all drug-related charges?
Alcohol.
Like were you
DUI?
Mainly alcohol. And this is the reason, I when I said a while back, I'm sorry I didn't go through that part, but when I said a while back, you basically trading one for another, as far as, the doctor giving me methadone to take away from the Loratab. Well, I myself medicated myself. I remember I went to Roanoke, Virginia. And small story here, I went to Roanoke, Virginia. I didn't have no medicine, no pills. I don't want to call it medicine, but no pills, no drugs. And I said, I'm going to basically drink myself out of this. And I woke up the next morning in the Roanoke County Jail, not knowing what happened, not knowing if I'd done anything to anybody, if I hurt somebody or hurt myself. Yeah. Scared me to pieces. It scared me so bad. Amongst other times, I guess you would basically call it the drunk tank, because you're not really in population. There might be a guy or two in there with you. Right. But it was funny is as soon as I got into the Mission of Hope, I'd go to jail every Friday, but it was for a different reason. It was for a different reason. Yes. So being from, in and out of rehabilitation center to jails, drunk tanks, I guess you would call them. Because I never really did an extent period of time. It was more like the Otis from the Andy Griffith Show.
That's great.
Other than me locking myself in there, or getting myself out. But I think from going in there being put in there forcefully to get the opportunity to go in there through the Mission of Hope, it was life-changing to get to minister to those men in Mobile Metro, and it was every Friday we got to go. Yeah, they let me bring my guitar, and they check everything obviously, but they let me bring my guitar and sing songs of praise and glorify Him, and I always bring a word. We had a couple of the ministers that were working there too, and you went to the women's jail, Wedges and stuff. So it was really cool to see neat. From the life of drugs and alcohol that I lived. Swapping over, kind of like the good side of what God can do in your life through the jail, and working through the jail.
When you let Him.
Yes, when you let Him.
Yeah, when you let Him. That's right. So, so you two have not met yet. Years now. So, okay. So we're gonna. So one of the things I find it interesting, though, Bo, which I want to ask you as you progress, it does seem like one of the things I'm impressed with is that even from the beginning, the first offer of treatment you took, like you were always. It seemed like there was an awareness that my life is out of control, and there was this constant conscious battle for you. Whereas for some,
there's got to be something more.
Yeah, they resist the identity or resist identifying even a problem in their lives. Right? Well, this isn't a problem. That's why I'm not going to treatment. But for you, you kind of recognize it the whole way. It was just kicking your butt. I mean, it was just an all-out brawl between you and addiction.
And the only answer I have for that is my mother raising me in the Christian home that I knew.
You knew that there was more for you.
I knew that this wasn't the life that God had wanted me to live.
Sure.
But I was always willing to, all right, let's see if this, But see, it also didn't work, as far as the first ones, because I wouldn't let it.
Right. You know? Well, and also you didn't know what done was, right?
Exactly.
You still wanted to drink a little.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Hope you enjoyed part 1 of Bo and Tasha's story. And trust me, we've just gotten started. Be sure to tune in next week on Jesus Loves Addicts for part 2 of their amazing redemptive story. We'll see you then.